Welcome friends. Today we are starting a new series of lectures, and our team of 4 will take up different aspects that are included in this particular series, and the series is called Feminist Theory Texts. Feminist theory, all of us know, it emerged majorly in the 20th century, but it had its roots in the 19th and 18th centuries. This feminist theory initially was in the mode of a campaign, and later on it entered the precincts of academics, and therefore it became very academic in the 20th century. And all of us know that when academic field becomes important and dominates proceedings of life, particularly related to culture, then texts become important. We have access to an idea or to a theory through texts, the printed words, the printed sheets. And so far we have been talking about social trends, cultural trends, literary works, authors, and the background against which they operate. But I thought that we should also sometimes focus entirely on the texts, the printed word, the printed statement. And in this particular series, it's a kind of a new effort by us. In this series, we would be taking up specific texts of 10 or 15 pages. We'll also mention where they would be available, and then we'll talk about the ideas there. So that is the purpose of giving the title to this particular series. It is called Feminist Theory Texts. The first author, the first writer, the first feminist thinker whom we pick up is Mary Wollstonecraft. Those who have done their BA and MA from different universities would have at least heard of this name. It was a woman who was very active in the latter half of the 18th century, and she died young, but apart from that, she wrote many books, and she moved around and talked about things, and she took part in the social and political action. And this Mary Wollstonecraft wrote this particular book, from which we take for discussion today the 2 essays of her book, Vindication of the Rights of Woman, the first 2 chapters. So we will not talk about the person as much, we will not talk about the book as a whole, we will talk about the first 2 chapters and the ideas that are enshrined in it. This series aims to introduce concepts and ideas central to the woman question across time and place. And this we have to understand thoroughly, that concepts are important, ideas are important, and we are able to relate better when a concept is explained to us, because in our mind also certain concepts reside, certain ideas reside. And if we have more ideas from elsewhere, then the ideas that we have in the mind, they get rightly and justifiably unsettled. So new concepts that bring about a kind of a stirring in our ideas are an important part of life. So here we will be talking about concepts and ideas which are central to the woman question. Being a woman is a very important thing, very, very difficult thing. Difficult, I say specifically, because the world has never been kind to women. They pay lip service to women, but otherwise they try to crush their personality, crush their initiative, and this is across time and place. So we will be discussing ideas in this series, and these ideas will enlighten us about the place of woman in society. It is implied that the series would be text-centric, as I already said, and familiarize the viewer with important passages in theoretical writing of feminist thinkers and critics. So we will have the advantage of going to the writer's ideas, and those ideas will be taken up directly. They'll be explained, sometimes they'll be commented upon for their relevance to us, for the relevance to the idea of equality between men and women, all those things, and we'll pick up these ideas. So that is the purpose of this series, that it is, apart from being It is not at all, for instance, time-centric or author-centric or trend-centric. It is basically idea-centric. Mary Wollstonecraft, early feminist thinker. I have already told you briefly that she belongs to the 18th century England, and we begin with her, as I have already said, A Vindication of the Rights of Woman. And see the long title. In the 18th century, people would leave nothing to chance, particularly if it came to writing about ideas, and they would try to explain things as much as possible, even through the title that they gave to their essay or to their book. And this book is called, I read again, A Vindication of the Rights of Woman, with strictures on political and moral subjects, and plan to focus on the books. And this is the title. Let's have a look at the title. Why does she say vindication? A kind of defense. She is arguing for something, and she is arguing for what she considers right, and that is the rights of woman. She knows, because after the hyphen, the subtitle begins, and the subtitle is with strictures on political and moral subjects. Strictures here would mean critical comments. So there will be strictures on political and moral subjects. And the moment we say this, then it causes raising of the eyebrows, because political and moral subjects are important part of life, and if we are critical of them, then people become somewhat threatened and warned as to what is meant by the wrong politics and wrong moral subjects. Is morality wrong? Some people might ask. And this writer, Mary Wollstonecraft, wants to provoke us to think by telling us very harshly sometimes that there have to be strictures on political and moral subjects. And then we will be planning in this series to focus on the book's first 2 chapters. So I'll talk about not the author as much. I'll be talking only about the first 2 chapters, and there also the ideas that are there. So the rights and involved duties of mankind considered is the first chapter. The title is Rights and Involved Duties of Mankind Considered. First she talks about mankind, and mankind, of course, means that there are also women in the world, even though men do not think so. They only think that instead of women we have slaves, we have assistants, we have lovely, beautiful companions, but they don't play any important social role in life. So anyway, the author would write in the first chapter about the rights and involved duties of mankind considered. So this is a title which is to be explained, and involved duties, are duties that are built in the very framework of behavior, and the duties are of mankind. What are the duties? I think it's an important question. You will all be curious to know as to what duties are of mankind. Do we have duties as human beings, as men? This is the question that is posed to us, and I would like to ask you to look inside. I would like to look inside myself as to find out what duties of mankind are, and are we then fulfilling, performing those duties. The second chapter is titled The Prevailing Opinion of a Sexual Character Discussed. She is discussing it. And there is an opinion about sexual character. Sexual character means that somebody is a male and somebody is a female. So male sex and the female sex. And is there a difference? Is there a kind of hierarchy? Is there a kind of superiority in one and inferiority in the other? All these are to be discussed in the second chapter. So imagine that she starts first talking about the duties of mankind, and the second chapter talks about the sexual character of behavior of men and women in society. So these 2 chapters that way will set us thinking about lots of problems that we face in life on a daily basis. So I'll just take 1 minute to tell you about the woman, because one should always keep in mind as to where she was born and how long she lived. So by way of essential information, I say that it's an English woman. She was born in England. She was born in 1759, the 6th decade of the 18th century, and she died in 1797. which means she hardly lived for how many years? 39 years. And she died in childbirth. She might have lived on otherwise. She was a very energetic person, very dynamic person. She would impress people by her ideas and even by her presence. And when she died at the age of 39. Anyway, and the last part is stirred by developments in France, climaxing in French Revolution of 1789. So you have to just somewhere in the background keep this factor that she is the voice of French Revolution. Now this is an important part, and when I discuss the ideas of the first two chapters in the book, then you can always relate those ideas to French Revolution. The first essay of the book, it's the Vindication, as I said already, and I gave you the full title, talks of man and the brute creation. Brute creation and man. This word creation is problematic. In other lectures that I gave and my team gave, we went into the question of creation. Are human beings created? This is a question that we pose, and in the 20th century and 21st century, people still discuss whether we have been created, made on a particular day, under a plan. This is the question. Anyway, this is the 18th century that is there, and this woman says, okay, let's assume that nature was created, brutes were created, and human beings were created. And she doesn't go into that question at that time. People weren't enlightened enough, informed enough to know that actually in the 19th century a person would come and tell us that life on the earth was not created. It evolved, and it evolved all over millions of years. It's not evolved, in just 2,000, 3,000 years ago. It evolved over millions of years, and it's just by accident that it went in a particular direction, and man became man, and brutes became brutes. Anyway, so her idea is in the first chapter that man has some kind of a link with the brute creation, the savages, the animals in the forest, and it says this chapter categorically, very clearly. She doesn't mince words. She says clearly that the superiority of man to the brute consists in reason. Now, it's a very simple thing for us to say. We can understand it very well. The animals do not have developed minds. They cannot think, and more than thinking, they can't reason. And reason is a very important, achievement of the human being on the planet Earth. And she is able to draw a line of distinction between man on one side and the brute on the other. Our central trait is reason. We can think, we can analyze, we can also synthesize, we can reach a conclusion, and we can put that particular thing with the help of reason in the realm of behavior. Further, reason in man manifests in the form of virtue and knowledge. Now, this is very important. Once again, after reason, things that are important, because reason will tell us what is wrong and what is right, what is virtuous and what is vicious, what is virtue and what is vice. So reason will tell us, thinking capacity of the human being will tell us whether something is good for others and ourselves, or whether something is bad for us and others. So virtue is that kind of a thing. So virtue is a very important trait. All of us know that if we have qualities, if we are good in the sense in which the word is used by moralists and others and social thinkers, so virtue is an important factor, like love, like affection, like tolerance, like giving respect to others, giving respect to ourselves. All these are virtues. And knowledge. Now, virtue alone, will not be sufficient. We should also have knowledge, and the knowledge comes with seeing things, with observing things, with applying the observed thing, with applying reason to the observed thing, and then you reach some tentative. I reach some tentative conclusions, and those tentative conclusions then fuse into what can be called knowledge. So three things he's talking about, and all these three are reason is one. Reason means to understand and to analyze Virtue is to find out which is the quality that is good for all of us, and that we should imbibe in ourselves with effort. And knowledge is that you know that something is wrong and something is right, and that it is right or wrong because of this reason. So that knowledge also is important, and these three words form the basis of the first chapter: reason, virtue, knowledge. Mark the three words start with a capital letter each because they are important. So reason with a capital R, virtue with a capital V, and the third one, knowledge with a capital K. For Wollstonecraft, the three words are presented as truths. They are the truths. So knowledge is truth, virtue is truth, and reason is truth. If you falter from these three, then you are actually faltering from truths. So these truths have to be always kept in mind, preserved, and imbibed. However, she says, these truths remain under attack constantly from deeply rooted prejudices. You can stop here for a second or so and see what is meant, because she is now making a point regarding society. Society does not like these three things. Society is attacking all the time these three things. The three things are knowledge, virtue, and reason. And he says these truths remain under attack constantly from deeply rooted prejudices. So what is our enemy? Our friends are very clear. These three are our friends, and we should inculcate them in our life. But then we also have enemies in society, and those enemies are prejudices. And those prejudices are not just there, on surface or in front of us. They are inside us. They are rooted in our minds, and from there they operate and become strong. And if I have prejudice in my mind, then I will not be able to see things clearly, understand things clearly, know things clearly. I will not be virtuous also. Your prejudice means that already you have an opinion. If you already have an opinion, then you will not grow. Then you will always start judging things from your own, because you have a prejudice. You already have an existing opinion, prior to observing things in life. That is what prejudices are. And these prejudices always close our eyes, always blind us, always make us wrong in our behavior. And she said that this is the case, that the three truths are all the time opposed by what she calls deeply rooted prejudices. What do we make of the statement? This is precisely what I am trying to do here in the discussion. How do we understand this word, this particular statement? Men in general, she says, seem to employ their reason to justify prejudices. This is not just laughable, it's a serious matter. That reason is being misused. Reason should be used in order to understand the nature of things around us. We don't do that. In fact, all the time in our behavior, we are justifying prejudices. Instead of telling them that they are wrong, telling people that prejudices are wrong, we are all the time saying these prejudices are important. Which means that in a way, having a blind mind, having an idea which leads us to blind behavior is something good. We start talking in support of prejudices, which they have imbibed. Where do we imbibe our prejudices from? From others, from our neighbors, from our parents when we are young, from the teachers in schools and colleges, from preachers in religion, from political thinkers in the outer area, from philosophers. So all these people, they use reason. Now see, the reason is meant to understand, but the reason is here being used to justify and support prejudices, which they have imbibed from the world around, and they can scarcely trace how. How can you, if you are justifying prejudices, how will you understand prejudices? Somebody has to come forward and tell you that you are prejudiced, that you have an opinion even before seeing things around you. So that way, reason will help us, but sometimes you can use reason wrongly, and this is a major fault and flaw of the behavior of people in society, that they instead of shedding prejudices, instead of arguing against them, they use arguments in favor of prejudices. So they can scarcely trace how. They just don't know how they do it, rather than to root them out. The purpose is to root them out, and if that is not done, then we are not doing our job properly. Now, she has already in the first chapter presented this point, and this point compels us to look at our opinions that we have held from the beginning of our conscious life, and which we might continue till the end. But if as human beings we don't use reason to find out our own thoughts and their nature, then there is no purpose in living life this way. So let us add quality to life, she says, and this quality is that you keep your eyes and ears open, you keep your mind also open, you see things for what they are, and you should always separate the grain from the chaff, the truth from falsehood, the truth from prejudices. Prejudices are false. First, think about men. She is talking about men in plural always. Why do we call men? We can call man. She used man sometimes in her essay. But what is the difference between man and men? If I look at it abstractly, I would say that man means all men, all people. The common quality of manhood, that is what makes it man. Men are actual men. Men are living people. Two people talking together, disagreeing with one another, fighting with somebody, or agreeing with others and sitting calmly. They are actual men. So actual men are called men, and when we are talking about the category of the human male all over the world, all over society, all over the country, then we'll call them man, not men. So this is used consistently in this essay. Men are different from man. So already I have commented on it. The second point is, on the other hand, see that the title of the book has in it the rights of woman. So men on one side and woman on the other. So when he talks about woman, then he talks about the category of the female, but when he talks about men, then he talks about actual men. There is an implication here, and please see that implication. The implication is that the prejudices that she has mentioned actually emanate from, they come from men, and therefore it is important to observe men in their real capacity. So far as the prejudices attack something, that is woman. All women, irrespective of where they come from, irrespective of where they live, the rights of woman is important as woman, and that is what she is saying. So that makes her a feminist. As a feminist, she would like to present things in such a manner that the behavior of men and their prejudices, they will apply to all the women, irrespective of where they are born, where they live, how they live, what challenges they face. All that is not important. Then the next point I'll just touch upon briefly, and then we can take it later. Later in the essay, Wollstonecraft makes a critical comment about Rousseau. It goes like this: impressed by this view of the misery and disorder which pervaded society, and fatigued with jostling against artificial fools, and there she stops. And I believe that Rousseau is an important thinker in our own time in the 18th century. Rousseau was supposed to be a philosopher of the French Revolution, and he had certain ideas. And see the courage of this woman, that she is critical of one of the best minds in France in the 18th century. And she found fault with Rousseau because Rousseau's views were important, but they were going backwards. They were not going forward. And Rousseau was in fact emphasizing the importance of not reason, but of imagination, but of some kind of abstract thing, the aspects of life which don't allow you to think, which in fact block your thinking. And she says very courageously, she says very critically, that Rousseau was wrong in this, that he was going entirely against the idea of reason. So this is the first chapter that we have touched upon, and the three things that the author has talked about. And then the enemy, the main enemy of the world all over, is that we have deeply set prejudices, and after these prejudices she takes up the question of Rousseau, who talks not about ideas, who talks not about reason, but talks about instincts, talks about innocence. Innocence is all right in a child, but is innocence good in a developed person, a man or a woman? So these questions are taken up in the first chapter. So more or less we have covered the first chapter, and soon we will come to the second chapter and discuss questions about woman in her time, in our time, in all the times that society has so far been observed. Thank you.